I tried to make a game in Godot 4.4 using only signals. You see, in Godot, signals are a powerful way to build loosely coupled systems, and I thought it would be a great way to explore how far I could push that workflow. So when I saw the Microjam 037 was running from April 4th to April 6th, I knew I had to jump in. The theme was food, and there was a prerequisite: food is the goal, which I immediately loved. It seemed fun and quirky, and I never made a game about food before, so this was the perfect opportunity. Let's get started. Now, would I ever consider building an entire game based on signals alone? Of course not, but for a weekend jam, this was a cool challenge to practice this particular system. Spoiler, the only signals idea didn't hold up all the way though. Somewhere around building the player interactions and the boss battle, I had to take a break. I had to break the rule for the sake of actually finishing the game. But even though the idea fell apart, the challenge kept me focused and taught me a lot. So I still consider that a win. I know it was a bit of a stretch to make a platformer based on food, but in the end, I think that it all worked out good because a lot of the players liked the idea of collecting fruit to navigate the level. Let me explain. You see, I came up with 3 foods that gave the player abilities to navigate the level. Cherries that instantly made the player jump, bananas that launched the player into a forward dash, and grapes that allowed the player to shoot chicken legs at the Munch Monster at the end of the level in an epic boss battle. Now let's take a look at the Signal Manager. The game mechanics was simple. I added the player to a group called Player and set input to move the player left and right using the left and right arrow keys or the A and D keys. Then I set up a Signal Manager as an autoload, which is Godot's version of a singleton, so that the Signal Manager could be accessed from anywhere in the game and made the various signals that would be emitted at different points in the game. How about I break this down? The cherry was made up of a node 2D that had child nodes of type animated sprite, area 2D, and a collision shape 2D. In the cherry script, I connected an on-body entered signal, checked if the body that enters was in the group player, and emitted the cherry collected signal. Then, in the player script, in the ready function, I connected to the onCherry collected signal and passed in the onCherry collected function, which made the player jump, simply by setting the velocity.y of the player equal to the jump velocity. But what are signals? I wonder if I made a video on this topic before. Game devs, lend me your ear. Do you know what are signals in Godot? Well, if you don't, signals are Godot's version of the observer pattern. They allow a node to send out a message that other nodes can listen for and respond to. This was taken straight out of the Godot documentation, and it was a really interesting read, so I do recommend that you check it out. Okay, it seems that I may have made a video or 2 on this topic already, and they do a really good job of explaining in detail what signals are, so I will leave links to them in the description. Okay, so moving on, I made a script for the various other pickups, but right away I think you can see a little design flaw, if you want to call it that. The cherry, the banana, and the grape scripts all look similar with repeating code. The fruit pickups all work in a similar way when the player collides with them. Like here, when the player collides with a pickup, they all emit a signal that they were collected, they all get disabled for a certain time, and then respawn, or in this case, get enabled. So now that the pressure of the jam is over, I wanted to revisit this and see how best I can improve the system. To do this is quite easy. I will use inheritance to handle this. I made a couple other videos where I went into greater detail explaining inheritance, so feel free to check them out if you want a deeper explanation. The links are also in the description. Let's make a custom class. Godot supports custom classes, so let's make a base class called Fruit Pickup to handle the repeating logic in all the fruit pickups. I will use the cherry script as an example to start with. The idea is to move all the shared logic, like disabling the fruit, hiding it, waiting to respawn, and showing it again, all into one place. So I will make a class called Fruit Pickup. This allows me to reuse this base class that will behave like a node 2D whenever another pickup extends it. Now to set up the variables. I will move over the exported variable for respawn time that lets each fruit decide how long it's going to stay hidden. The sprite node and call node variables are generic references to the actual sprite and collision nodes. So the base class doesn't care what they're named or how they're structured. It just uses them once they are assigned. Next, I make an onArea body entered function. This function checks if the thing that touches the fruit is the player, emits the appropriate signal, each fruit tells what that signal is, disables the fruit, hides it, waits, then brings it back. Now let's take a look at what changed in this cherry script. The old cherry script had hard-coded logic for hiding the sprite, disabling the collider, and respawning, and called signalManager.cherryCollected.emit directly. But the new cherry script is extending the base class fruit pickup. This tells Godot that cherry is now a special type of fruit pickup. Then, we still get references to the actual cherry-specific nodes, but we are now plugging those references into the base class. So fruit pickup can do all the work. And finally, this overrides the base class's empty function to emit the cherry-specific signal. So instead of repeating this exact block of code in every fruit script, we defined it here once. Now all that's left to do is change the scripts attached to the banana and the grape. And finally, this is a placeholder function. It will be used by all the other pickups to be overridden with the signal to be emitted by each pickup. Now for the other pickups. The chicken pickup, however, does not need to be respawned and does not emit signals that assist with the player movement. But that's not to say it does not emit a signal. So where are we with the signal so far? Let's see. When is the player hit signal emitted? I think it should be emitted when the player hits a spike. Okay, that's right. And what happens next? Well, it makes sense to check the player because it's emitted when the player collides with a spike. Okay, that's also right. In the ready function of the player script, the player connects with the spike hit signal and calls the resetPlayerPos function, which does exactly what it's called. It resets the player's position. Okay, this can be a bit confusing. I could have called it something like onSpikeHit so that it's clearer that the connection is being made between the signal and the function. But I will lose what the function is doing in the name. Naming conventions for functions like this might seem trivial, but it's actually a big deal when it comes to readable, maintainable, and scalable code. And it also helps you to remember what's going on in the code if you have to revisit the script after some time. So let's break this down. Let's take a closer look at things. Calling the function resetPlayerPos is very clear about what it does, so it's easy to reuse in other situations, not just spikes. However, it doesn't tell you why it's being called. There is no context of the spike hit. On the other hand, calling the function onSpikeHit is clear about when and why it's called, using signal-based naming, following the common pattern in Godot, onSomething event. But it's not obvious what this onSpikeHit actually does, unless you read inside it. So a good practice would be to use both. I could just split the behavior into two parts, onSpikeHit, and in there, call resetPlayerPos. Then, make the connection using signalManager.spikeHit.connect onSpikeHit, and keep the original function resetPlayerPos. This makes it easier to add more behavior later, like playing a hurt animation, sound effect, or reducing health, without changing too much. Although resetPlayerPos is a good name for the action itself, for signal connections, it's better to use a name like onSpikeHit as the entry point, then call more specific functions inside it. So I think that you get it by now. Making a game with signals can get tricky. This script is just a bare bones list of all the signals being used. But how about this? Using a signal manager script as an autoload to keep all your signals in one place is a great way to keep things organized. Comments can also be used to organize signals into groups, making the script way more readable. And when naming signals, use verbs and past tense for signals like spike hit, cherry collected, and so on. If you're a visual thinker, making comments in the form of a simple diagram or chart of signal relationships can really help when debugging or collaborating with others that are joining after development has started. In each script, when you connect a signal, write a comment for clarity. I know it seems simple, but this massively helps when coming back to your script after a break or in a game jam when stress is high. And while I'm talking about connecting signals, instead of scattering .connect all over my game, I try to centralize it in ready functions like this as much as possible. Or even better, separate the signal connections into a connect signals function and call that in ready, in case there might be other functions in ready to avoid clutter. And if the signal manager ever becomes too bloated, I could split it later, like fruit signal hub for pickup signals, combat signal hub for boss, chicken, and spike signal stuff, and game state signal hub for win-loss or game over. But that's only if things really grow. This current setup is fine for a small or medium-sized game. Now for the epic boss battle. So far, so good. But time was running out. So for my epic boss battle, I wanted to add a small health system to the boss. But I did not want to add a health bar. I wanted to get a little more creative. I decided to make the boss flash red at faster intervals as the boss health got lower. Totally original, right? But I only had a couple of hours left, so I did not use signals to make this work. Instead, when the boss gets hit, it loses health and may start flashing pink. The flashing speed is based on how low the health is. High health, no flashing, mid health, slow flashing, and low health, fast flashing. If the health drops to 0, the boss dies, the player wins the game, and the boss disappears. I mean, there is still some use of signals in the on-boss hit function, but not for the actual functions of the health system. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I still have learned a lot about signals and how to use them. So, like I said at the start of this video, I still consider that a win. You see, I believe that making a game as an indie dev is personal. It's your game and nobody has a right to judge you for your code or tell you what systems to use. If you're working in a big team and you're not playing by the rules and guidelines set by the senior devs, well, I guess that emits a different kind of signal. And so comes to the end of my love affair with signals. This is the third video I made about signals in the last 6 months. So I want to build on this while moving on to something else. I think that I want to take a look at decoupling. In general programming, decoupling means designing components so that they don't heavily rely on each other, allowing you to modify or replace one part without breaking others. In Godot, this usually translates to structuring scenes and scripts so that individual pieces like animations, physics, and abilities can be swapped or reused easily. And another thing is that it favors composition over inheritance. Remember, a great way to do this is by having fun. Join a game jam and add your own learning challenge to it. By the time you're watching this video, I may or may not have participated in the Microjam 038 and started working on figuring out decoupling. Either way, I would absolutely love it if you join me on my journey. Thanks for watching. We covered a lot today. Core mechanics with no gimmicks. From creating a base class for pickups like cherries, bananas, and grapes, to managing signals in a clean and scalable way with a signal manager autoload. I really hope this video helped you in some way. If it did, drop a like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll know when I upload another video. And while you're here, why not check out one of my other videos like these that explain the basics of signals, or head over to my itch page and give Escape the Munch Monster a try. Until next time, happy coding, and I'll see you in the comments. This has been the Ragu Game.